Thank you all. And thank you, John. I actually asked John to intro me because he's been such a cheerleader, and we've gotten to know each other since I did speak for PNSQC's meetup. I think it was last January, February, give or take. So I wanted to start this first by saying I am not a professional speaker. Honestly, this is the first and only PowerPoint I've done, although I have done 3 iterations on it. So I have changed it based on the 3 other times I've given this talk. And I've included things. I was like, oh, I should have done that. I should have included that as well. So just bear that in mind, and I appreciate it. So this is me. You're welcome to connect with me. I luckily got my actual name instead of some numbers and random digits and whatnot. So I'm going to start with, don't know if you've heard this term, don't spray and pray. And what that is referring to, it's the second bullet point there. It's the affectionate term for literally sitting at your computer, spraying out, just applying online and hoping and praying that you get something. But let me go back to the first one. I'm going to say I never apply online, and I'm going to do that slowly for effect. I never apply online. I don't believe it works. You have too much competition, and all you're getting is those rejection letters that is just going to bring you down. So my process, and I give a statistic that only about 10% of jobs are gotten through online application. I think in this current job market that I'm not even sure that that's true. My data is out of date, but I consider applying online a total waste of time. Now, I'm going to give you my procedure, if you will, my process in the first 5 minutes, and then I'm going to give you the background that supports it, the assumptions that I think you should have already done before you try my process. Okay, so you have everything in the first 5 minutes, hopefully, but then we'll get back to the stuff that is behind it. All right, so first, I just want to talk about a little historical. Now you're going to think, okay, why talk about what it was like 30 years ago? But let's bear with me, you'll see the correlation. So back in the day, you know, lots talking in the 80s and 90s when I was fresh out of college, and the internet didn't exist. So what you're doing is you're looking in the Sunday newspaper, because that's where the most of the ads were, and you would circle something, or you cut it out, and then you'd try and figure out, you actually physically had to mail letters. And what made you stand apart back then was, oh, I had baby blue paper and I had gray paper, in hopes that, you know, it being on a different color paper made you stand out. I don't know if it was effective, but anyway, but back then what worked was that if you could have your resume submitted by someone who worked there. So the examples I wanted to give was, back in the day, I worked at Coca-Cola for a summer college internship, and I answered the 1-800-GET-COKE line during the summer of Coca-Cola, Old Coke, and New Coke. And yes, it was a great job. However, people waited 3 hours to yell at me. Right? I want my old Coke back. But how I got that job, at the time, my mom was, I believe, working either AT&T or Lucent. She had the Delta account. Her peer, Ron, had the Coca-Cola account. So mom physically took a hard copy of my resume, gave it to Ron. Ron gave it to somebody at Coca-Cola, and I got to answer the 1-800 number at Coca-Cola that summer, because it was physically a relationship, and it was passed by hand. And the same thing happened with AT&T. I saw something in the newspaper. It was a Norel, a staffing company back in the day. And I was like, oh, mom, look, they're looking for people at a major telecommunications corporation in the Alpharetta area, which is 10 minutes away. And they were looking for people with foreign languages like French. I want to use my French. That was one of my goals. And so mom, instead of me applying through Norel, she found out internally and got my resume to the right hands. Now, apply that to current day. Here's my strategy. Identify it. Now, I use Indeed. There are a bunch of other ones. You can use Glassdoor or other ways to find it. But what is unique about you? For me, those keywords are OTT, which is over the top, or set-top box, QA, and what that is your Roku, your Fire TV, your Apple TV. Okay, so that's a fairly small niche. And the other thing is I want to use my French. I want to use my foreign language skills. That's what sets me apart. So I put the keyword for that is localization QA. Okay, now if I can marry the two of those together, I'm in heaven. But I digress. So I go out, I have a push notification in Indeed for either localization or French QA. And so it'll send me an email. And I saw, here's my next example of how this works in modern day, the process using the current tools we have, not the newspaper from years ago. So I put localization QA in Atlanta, Georgia. It came back, it sent me an email and it said, oh, hey, look, there's a company, North Highland Company, which is like a small Deloitte locally in Atlanta. And they have a localization QA job in Alpharetta, which is the town next to me. I'm like, oh, I got excited. So I take that information and I go to LinkedIn and I look at North Highland Company and I look at who do I know as a first level contact.
Is anybody in the room having trouble seeing the screen? We can look at trying to turn off the lights over soon. That would be great.
Thank you. Okay, where was
Michael says
okay, great.
no going to sleep.
Okay, I won't. Actually, that's nicer for me too. Okay, so I looked at North Highland Company. I looked at who do I have first level contacts with. And of that, I had 4 people that I was first level contacts. And strategically, you look at how well do you know those 4 people? Is it somebody you actually have met or worked with, or you just randomly know from volunteering, or you've never actually met them, but you share something in common? And also look at what their job function is. So I chose to reach out, of the 4, I chose to reach out to James because, first of all, he was in IT as opposed to HR. So he might have more connections in the company. But also, I had tried to help him in a job search 5 years earlier. So he owed me one, right? I paid it forward, and now maybe I'm going to have a little payback. So I take that information and I take I either send a LinkedIn chat, which is more my norm, or an email, and I include the URL of that job that I saw on Indeed. And I'll show you on the next screen, but basically what it says to do there. So here's what I wrote to James. First, I said, oops, sorry, I didn't get back to you before. But hey, by the way, I'm in a job search. And here's the URL of the job I'm looking at. But interestingly enough, I say in the middle there, it's a localization job at North Highland in Alpharetta. It doesn't tell me what languages I would be testing in, because frankly, if it's Mandarin Chinese, I'm not your girl. If it's French or European, I've tested in French, Spanish, German, Dutch, Italian. So long as I can walk through the process in English, I can do it in French, and then I familiarized myself enough with it that I can go through the other European languages, but not Mandarin. I'm not going to see as much in that case. So that's my note. Look at his response. And by the way, I did, for the most part, the people that I wrote these notes and I took these screenshots, I've canceled out some personal information just for privacy. So James responds pretty quickly, actually. And he's like, hey, it's going to be English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. Great. Wow. That would be so much fun for me. And, you know, what can you tell me the industry? How do you suggest that I apply? So should I give you my resume? Should I apply online? And he goes on and he does tell me the company here. And I go on and I respond to him and I say, hey, I just sent you my resume to your email. And so I'm going to go back and stick on that for a minute. Just for closure, I want to tell you what happened next. And I don't have that a screen for that. James, I submitted my resume to him. He must have told Marie in HR to call me, or she reached out to me on LinkedIn. But he didn't send the resume. I guess he was too busy, but he forwarded my name. She reached out to me. I had an HR screen with her. I then had an interview with Michelle, and we hit it off great for an hour. And Michelle worked for James, and James said, I don't need to talk to her. I'm good. Got the job offer, started, boom. 4 days, 5 days into the job. Oh, we're going to be doing Spanish and Arabic. All right. I've got a lot to learn on right to left languages. And I did, and boy, was it a headache, but I did it. So anyway, that's where that ended. So I just wanted you to see that's my process. And this was a really good example of I located it, I identified it based on what I would enjoy. I reached out to who I thought strategically would be the best person. And I asked him how best to apply, and we moved it from there. But I think it also helped that I tried to help him in a job search, right? So that's the strategic part. So that's my whole process, and that was my best example. And it's a recent example. It was 2021. So anyway, what you need to be able to do is say, what are those skills or tools that you use that are unique? So for instance, on the OTT side, on the Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV side, that might be Charles Proxy. It's a tool that you have to use in that environment. So I might set up a Charles Proxy push notification to see who else in Atlanta might be using that. Now, if you're open to other locations, maybe not put that city delimiter. Yeah, I put the second bullet. I do like to help people in a job search, and I reached out to a high school friend. I could tell he was in a search, and I said, "Give me 3 words that define you." And he came back with passionate, detail-oriented, and results-driven. I didn't know what to do with that. I couldn't do anything with that. It was so overwhelming. You didn't give me anything I could work on or work with. Tell me those things that are unique about you or that you enjoy and you want to use, because then you're going to be passionate about it and it'll show in the interview. I already mentioned I set up a push notification. For me, that's for the terminology of localization QA. I don't always put Atlanta. Sometimes I leave myself open to other cities. In fact, I did one time. I found a localization QA job out in the Bay Area, and my sister happened to live there. So this is a little trick I did. I didn't even put it in the presentation. I put my sister's the local landline, a 408 area code, and I put my cell phone number in the other, a 678. So when the company called, they called the landline. My dad happened to be at my sister's house and said, "Oh, do you have her cell phone? Could you give her a call on that?" And so I got a job working at Netflix for a month doing French language QA on their website. I appeared to be local, and all I did was I bought a one-way ticket on the way there and a one-way ticket on the way back, and I wrote that off because I was 1099 employee. And I stayed with my sister. My costs were very low, so I don't want to say I was desperate, but let's use the word hungry. There's a difference between the two. In 2010, when I did that, I was very hungry. I wanted this kind of work. I couldn't find this kind of work in Atlanta, but I knew the Bay Area would be a very good market, and I had a free bed to sleep in. So just some ideas of how to sort of be more open and getting some opportunities. Okay. I can tell you that in the past, when I've gotten laid off, I was a mess mentally, and I'm better at it now. I understand it better now, and I don't take it nearly as personally. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is you need to take that vacation. You need to, now you might call it a digital detox or whatever you just need to get away and relax and maybe catch up on doctor's appointments or other appointments. Yes, John.
I see a lot of people taking pictures of the screen, which is totally cool. Just these will all be uploaded to YouTube in the future, so you can just grab them there, and they might need your.
Thanks, John. And yeah, if you want, I'm happy to share this. Just send me an email. What's that? I haven't, because I was sort of a last minute addition, but okay. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, it'll be after the conference is done for sure, because there's still things to do. So yeah, so what I said here is I really want to encourage everybody to go ahead and take a vacation, get away, walk away, so that your mental health, because frankly, I know in the very beginning I was weepy. I was rejected. I was bitter and angry and sad all at once. And you can't do a good job search if that's where your mindset is. So walk away for a little bit if you can. I hope you can afford it. I know not everyone can. Um, so I say self-care. That also means down here to the fourth bullet, go and see friends. And I suggested, because they're the ones that care about you. And if you can't afford coffee, I'm hoping they will pay for your coffee because you're now the job seeker. But if not, if you're afraid of that, or lunch, do what I call a walk and talk. Number one, it gets you in some exercise, and it takes away the whole having to spend money, which you're worried about. Um, so go and walk and talk, and that way you get the exercise and a lack of uh, spending, and they'll want to help you. And I also say go out and volunteer. So by the way, I'm a volunteer coordinator here, so talk to me. but I have always believed in volunteering over the years. Back when I was fresh out of college and I really wanted to use my French, I would volunteer at the French American Chamber of Commerce, because they would have people that the companies that I should be targeting. The French companies that are doing business in the United States, they should be my target, right? However you can apply that. I know most of you are probably not looking for French, but whatever those groups are in your city or in your specialization. And then I just wanted to give an example or two on taking a vacation. So when I take a vacation, I'm just much happier. I'm getting away from things. I have less responsibility. So the example I'm going to give, this particular person has a very unique first name, so he asked to be anonymous. Totally fine. I did ask permission. Back in 2017, I had just finished on the NBA app at Turner, and I was taking time to decompress. I took the unemployment happily, and an opportunity to go to Tuscany presented itself, and so I took it. And this friend of mine, I'll call him DD. I know him from high school, from 30 years ago, and we also overlapped in college. And he looked at me. I'm sitting in Tuscany. I did bring my computer. And he looked at me. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing looking at me?" Because I'd had a glass of wine. And he wrote back, well, and I did put in there, "Hey, by the way, I just left Turner at the end of June, and this is September. Let me know if you hear of anything." And he wrote back immediately and said, "Hey, we just had somebody that that you're connected to applied at our company for a developer position." And then I, of course, responded saying, "Hey, I know that person from this company," and blah, blah, blah. But then he goes on and says, "We've got a QA position, but it's out of Hilton Head, Bluffton, South Carolina. I'm in Atlanta." And he's like, "Send me your resume if you might be interested." And I did. And just to give closure on this one, I will say that I suggested we do a phone interview while I was in Italy, but I wanted to do it on a landline because on a cell phone it's really expensive. And he's like, "Yeah, we got Hurricane Matthew coming through. We'll talk to you when you get home." So I did. I followed up. I had a phone screen with HR, had a phone screen with DD here. They brought me down and paid for my expenses to drive down to Hilton Head, back to back 4 interviews, got the offer. As far as I know, I was the only one that they interviewed. But I will say during the process, I did him and haw a little bit. I did push back. I said, "Hey, can this be freelance?" And he said, "No, we want it to be full-time." I was like, "Okay, can I work out of the Atlanta office? Can I work in a Hilton Head maybe 3 weeks out of the month and 1 week in Atlanta? Because there is an Atlanta office. I saw it on the website." He's like, "Well, Sue, what's going on?" I was like, and because he's my age, he was a year ahead of me in high school and college. I honestly said, "Look, I've got 70-year-old parents with health issues. I've got a dog nearing end of life." And I even said, which I wouldn't have said normally, "I just paid off my mortgage. You are not offering relo. I don't want a new mortgage in Hilton Head." So he said, okay, yeah, why don't you come down for 2 or 3 weeks and get to know the people, get to know the processes, and you can work out of the Atlanta office. I'm like, we can do that? He's like, yeah, because now, mind you, he's basing his decision on the fact that of who I was in high school, right? But he looks at my resume, he's seen what I've done, and he did call a mutual friend from high school and say, hey, what are you doing? He's like, Sue, if there was something wrong with you, I would have heard about it because we know 50 to 100 people in common, right? So I did not need to move to Hilton Head at that point. Would it be lovely to live down on the coast? Sure. But it was the right decision for where I was in my life. Let's talk about just resume and other things in the community that are available to you. Um, I don't know how many companies still offer what's called outplacement services. I, over the years, have had Right Management twice and Lee Hecht Harrison. Those are the ones, at least in the Atlanta market, that are offered. Absolutely use the heck out of it. We also in Atlanta have Roswell United Methodist Church and North Point Community Church, and I've also been to some synagogues in Atlanta that offer what we call job seeker programs. They offer someone to help you with your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your job search strategies, all kinds of different seminars. So I don't know what that is in your city, but have a look for it. I would do a search on job seeker programs. Definitely have other people proof your resume. I had a French friend of mine proof it, and he actually found a typo in English on my resume. Like, dang, it took somebody foreign born to find that. It's like, huh, you're right. How'd I miss that? And it had been on there for years. Things I've learned about LinkedIn over the years and or my own biases. I want to see a photo. In fact, I called a recruiter on it one time. I was like, yeah, I thought about not responding to you because you don't have a photo. And I thought you were a spammer. And she immediately appreciated the feedback and put a photo up there. If you have less than 100 connections, if you're, yeah, those are things I just don't trust. You know, the kids today, and by that I mean the kids in college or fresh out of college, they're being told just randomly reach out to people. And I think that's wrong. You need to start with the people you know and get recommendations there. And I put on here my second bullet. I've learned you should have one of each of the three. You should have a boss, a peer, and a subordinate, if at all possible. And if that subordinate isn't possible, then do it from a college group or whatever. Just or even in the volunteer world, if you have run volunteers, then use that. I do believe in shouting out people. If I know other people are looking, I say, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, John. And by the way, you should talk to so and so. So that's one way I'm trying to help other people. And when you're in a job search, if you're helping other people, they're going to return the favor, hopefully. So long as they understand what you're looking for and it's not in direct competition with them, I would think they would help. Say, hey, Sue, I saw this and thought of you. So you all know I want localization now, and you're probably not a match, but you would pass on the information to me and vice versa, whatever your target is or your area of specialization. Let's see. I've already covered that. So the last one, the green ribbon, I'll be honest, I have never paid for LinkedIn. I think it's a great product. But I've never really liked the green ribbon. I think it's, what's that?
What is the green ribbon?
Oh, I'm sorry. It says open to work. So it's a little filter, if you will, that's put on top of your picture, your profile picture on LinkedIn. I think it shows a level of desperation, but I don't know that. Put it out there if you want. But one feedback that I got from someone recently was, once you put that out there, you seem to be spammed with a lot of people that want to help you do your resume, and honestly, it's I want you to use your time more wisely. In that case, you would be more reactive. I think my approach is more proactive. in the sense that it's the same thing with when you put your resume out on Dice or on one of the job boards, Monster, whomever is popular now. Once you put your resume out there, you now have to filter through everyone that's just wants to get your resume and try and spray it to all their clients. And I prefer my resume to go somewhere where I particularly want it to go. I want to understand the situation. I want it, I don't necessarily have to have a remote job, but I don't want to be driving into downtown Atlanta that's a good hour drive 5 days a week for a position, working for the government. No, I want more flexibility at this point in my life. But everybody has their own needs. If you really need a job, then you're going to take that. Yes, Mihail.
There is like very recently some articles about one of the UX designers who created pink ribbon with the desperate name, and reading through those articles can show you how people see green.
Yeah. They see it as desperate. That's my bias. I don't know if everyone has that bias, but I prefer to control my own job search.
You mentioned this at the webinar that I met you at.
Yeah.
And so I had mine off for the first 4 months of my job search,
Mhm.
and then I wasn't getting it, so I turned it on. It's been on for the last 4 months. It's the same result.
Really?
And I'm happy to say I haven't been spammed by recruiters.
Well, that's good.
So that's good, but I'm kind of doing this experiment just because of what you said.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I won't turn it on for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're not seeing a discernible difference.
I've not, yeah.
Well, that's good feedback. I have not done that.
That's the pink desperate one, which I think is kind of like what am I supposed to do with that? Even as a recruiter, like, do I give you priority? It just seems kind of an interesting thing. But
Yeah.
someone's experiment, right? They're experimenting with the hashtag of a ribbon they made themselves.
Yeah. And there's other ribbons out there now. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
But I will say that using that trigger of the open to work banner as an announcement, I never got that much reach.
Okay,
on
good.
post in any other
Or
way
not.
that I similarly until I did that.
Yeah.
So to use it, maybe take it off right after. I don't know.
Toggle it on and off.
Yeah, but I have had a lot more people come to me from my own network who I haven't spoken to previously. It also gives them the opportunity to repost it.
Yes.
Reach that way. So there are
But they're
plenty of pluses and minuses.
But they're reposting your post that you, as opposed to just posting for you just because of the ribbon.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can post a link to somebody's profile that way as well.
Mhm.
But it's just so much easier for your network to share when they see that announcement. They have that visual trigger in their brain to make that behavior happen.
Yeah.
It also triggers karma, by the way, because your colleagues can see that you're open to work and they'll be on the lookout for you.
Yeah. It does.
Like I'll be on the lookout for Amy now that I've met you the other day.
Right.
Like, okay, good. So it's,
and you're not going to be in competition, in my opinion.
right.
So it's helping each other.
Or also job seeking the same role as me who are also reposting on my behalf, which is really kind.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think it's a balance of how you use it. There are folks who are in a similar situation to me with that banner who are posting about their open to work status on a pretty frequent basis.
Yeah.
And I think that, can take any.
Sometimes it can be too much, but yeah. And that reminds me, I didn't put it in here, but there is a switch within LinkedIn, and I'd have to look to see where to find it. But there's a switch that you can turn on that says you're open to conversations with recruiters.
Oh
Yeah, so you are open to work, but it's a more subtle behind the scenes switch than the green open to work banner that is visible. I said banner, ribbon. Yes, Gwen, Dr. Gwen.
So what advice would you give to somebody that has a limited reach? I know a young lady that's in her mid-30s. She has a bachelor's of psychology and 2 master's degrees, forensics and counseling.
Okay.
But she never gets a call back. She never gets some door in, but it's because she was a stay-at-home caregiver for about 14 years.
Okay.
Got her degrees, and now it's like, yeah, you can go to Walmart. What would you suggest? That's why I am here.
I get it. So yeah, the stay-at-home part is a challenge. However, what I would suggest is she needs to be talking to the people that she actually knows. And I think, oh, this is perfect timing because the slide I have up is going to answer your question in a sense. So I believe in the power of building my network. I started back in 2006 on LinkedIn, so you might say I was sort of an early adopter on LinkedIn. But at that point in time, I think they looked at it almost like you had just posted your resume on Monster, and I think companies at that point in time actually look like, oh, you're actively looking. We're gonna maybe get rid of you, but I can't prove that. But back to that. So in 2006, I did get laid off, and I was trying to figure out, I was transitioning from being, say, a programmer to QA, and I didn't know what I didn't know at that point in time. But because I had the technical background, QA was logical. In my network, I definitely already reached out to high school friends, college friends, grad school friends, my AT&T former coworkers, my Vanity Fair former coworkers. And then I put in here the third bullet, any part of my life. For me, I was playing a heck of a lot of volleyball, French conversation groups, church, neighbors, my parents' neighbors, my sister's neighbors. And I even put on here my 2nd grade piano teacher's son. Honestly, he would help me if I asked. I do believe it. Of course, he lives in like Iowa, but anyway. I believe in connecting with anyone that could help. Now, at the very beginning, I only connected with those people I actually knew, or that I actually uh, felt comfortable being a reference for. I mean, so if there was a coworker that I didn't like and I didn't care for their work, I didn't necessarily want to connect because I felt like I was already okaying their work, and I didn't want to do that. But I've opened things up in my mind over the years because other people have helped me in my job search. So I give people a little more leeway. I will connect, and if you immediately try and sell me something or say something, I can always disconnect. So I've changed my mind over the years on that a little bit. But then the last thing here, and I put what fraternities do you belong to? And I want to use that term loosely. Yeah, I did happen to be in a business fraternity in college, but that wasn't my point. My fraternities, if you will, anyone who has a military experience, they should be talking to other military people because military want to hire other military because they know what they've been through. It's the same concept. I was an exchange student. AFS was the program. I'm going to connect with somebody who has done that program. It doesn't matter to me what country they went to. I know what they've lived through because I lived through it, right? So what are those fraternities? In this case, University of Georgia Alumni Association, AT&T alumni, those are all parts of groups that I could be in on LinkedIn. And those are people that I will connect to almost immediately. You're going to get a yes on the connection request. And then there again, if they screw up, I say bye-bye. And you can quietly do that and they don't know it until they go looking for you. So building the network is primary. And everything that I said in the very beginning, if you don't have a good network, it's going to be very difficult, or you're going to be asking me to use my network, which then there's the question of how well do I know that person? How much am I willing to go up to the line for them, right? up to bat. We can talk more afterwards, Dr. Gwen. Leveraging LinkedIn. I just want to give one other little example. I think we're almost done here. I remember, so 2016, I had finished up at a marketing agency. In 2015. I was a mess. You know, it was like November of 2015. I reached out to somebody who had worked at the same company, and she had now become a recruiter. And so around Christmas time, I was like, oh, I need to start looking. I need to put on my big girl pants. And I reached out and said, hey, Randy, let's go have coffee. And it was the holidays. It was literally Christmas week, and we never quite made it out for coffee. You know, everybody has a lot going on then. But she came back around in January because I had said I'm looking, and she's like, "Hey, are you still open to work? Are you still looking?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "Well, I've got this position over at March Madness at Turner Sports, so that's college basketball, for those that aren't aware, and they're looking for a BA, PM, QA all in one, but I'm gonna convince them that they really just need a QA." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'd be interested." So how that worked was she convinced the hiring manager to hire a QA instead of the trifecta, and she put me in. And we only had a phone interview. His name was Chris. Uh, and I basically, you know, he asked me a question. It's like, "Oh, you want to know what I have in my little drawer at the office? I've got, you know, an iPhone, an Android, an iPad, a PC with a desktop, and then I have a Mac over here. And then I've also tested on Xbox or PlayStation when I was at Netflix." So, you know, so he could see the breadth of my devices. And this little email, though, was right before the actual interview. So at this point, I have the full name of the person I'm going to interview with, and it's crossed out here, as well as the emails of the people that I sent this to. Okay, here's my process again. Who do I know at Turner Sports? I now know I have an interview with Chris, and I saw I have 4 people, none of which are connected to Chris on LinkedIn. I was like, darn. So I was a little assertive, and I put the 4 people in there. I said, "Hey guys, I've got an interview tomorrow with Chris. On the off chance that any of you know him or and just aren't connected, could you put in a word for me, a good word?" And Christina writes back, "Now, to give you a little history, I have a habit of helping people in a job search. I helped Christina in a job search a few years before that. I literally took her out. We had a glass of wine. She was crying because she's like, nobody else has tried to help me like this." And so when I sent this out to her, she's like, "I'll be happy to put a glowing reference out to you." I sent an email from my work Turner Sports email address to Chris because she could find him in the internal system, and said, "Hey, you should really hire her. She's a good person." And plus you tie that. So I've got an internal referral, and he hears all the devices I can do. So I can learn Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, right? Because I've done all these other ones. So yeah, so she's like, "Oh, I just sent it to him." And I've been working on March Madness, the electronic billboards. So she's already sort of kind of in the realm of March Madness, at least within Turner. And this one, so I get the job and I leave it after, I think I started after Martin Luther King Day in January, and it was done by the first week of April because that's the season for March Madness. But then, okay, who else is going to want this? Who else wants this new skill I just acquired? Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV. Well, the NBA. Oh, Turner does the NBA. Huh. I applied through a different recruiter that I'd seen on Indeed for an MBA. Literally, Chris, who I just finished March Madness with, had coffee with Ben, who was the hiring manager for NBA on Turner's campus, and they talked about me. And I got the job because I just know all the protocols within Turner. Yeah, you know, we do Jira, we do Confluence, we do these devices. I know the processes. So doesn't it make sense? I just did basketball, college basketball at Turner. Now I'm going to do pro basketball at Turner. Isn't that a smart way to use it? So who else wants that skill set? I'm like, ooh, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, the Olympics. That would be nice. So that's how my brain was like, okay, I've got this new skill. Who else wants me for this skill? Okay. I believe in in-person networking. you guys are here. This is the best place. You should be talking to each other. You should be helping each other. If you're in a job search, or if you're not in a job search, then help those that are in the room with you that are. Inevitably, you're probably going to get laid off and you're going to need their help, right? So I already mentioned chambers of commerce, tech meetups, but don't go specifically to just QA groups, you know, something that may be close next door. So whether it's an agile user group, or Browser Stack is a tool that I use. Lock Lunch is localization lunch, and at the churches near me, at least, there's what we call accountability groups. You meet once a week or so, and you say, hey, I'm frustrated with this, and hey, who else has run into this problem, and who can tell me about this, you know. So be out there and talking to people. Yes, John. I mentioned that because Browser Stack actually reached out to me because I am a user, and they have meetups now. Unfortunately, most of those were going to my work email that I don't have access to now. Elevator pitch. You know, I've already told you guys, but if you, I'll just read this one out loud, because I want you all to have an elevator pitch. You should be talking about this here in this at this conference. So for me, I'm at the intersection of localization and streaming, and what those mean is localization is language testing. Preferably European or French and Spanish would be my best. And then streaming is your cross-browser testing and connected devices, which is your Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV. And what I just basically said, I stole my thunder. The great niche for me, which would make me happy, is the intersection of those two. And what companies do those look like? And that would be like a Pluto TV, which was going international, and they have the streaming content. And the Olympics would love that. And, you know, I put in there, if it involves volleyball and baseball, I'm even happier because I know those topics at least. And then, you know, I'm enjoying it, and I'm probably doing well at it. So, but what is that for you? If you can't write this elevator pitch 5-6 sentence paragraph, you need to concentrate on that, because that's what you should be talking to other people here if you're a job seeker. But yours is going to look totally different than mine. Okay, just a few more thoughts. When you're reaching out to the person, you're not really asking for the job up front. You're asking for more information, right? Kind of like what I did with James at the very beginning. I said, hey, James, you know, I see this job and here's the link. What it's missing is it doesn't tell me the languages, so I can't self-identify whether I would be good. And so he came back and he said French, Spanish, Portuguese. I'm like, great. What's next? What's my next step? And of course he told me what to do there, and you know the outcome. I'm going to go back to coffee chats. In person, I truly believe is the best, whether it's a walk and talk or an actual coffee or a lunch. And then, but like I said, you're just asking for information. You're not asking for the job yet. However, once you get to that, you've built that relationship, you've had that conversation. Yeah, your question is it better for me to be internally submitted by you than to be putting it on the company's website and applying online? I personally believe that is my target every single time. And so one question is, do they maybe get a kickback for submitting someone internally? I know in the past, you know, some companies have had $500 or $1,500 referral bonuses, excuse me. I don't know if that still exists in our current environment, but it's worth an ask, you know, because if they can get $1,500 for submitting you 90 days later, they're going to be way more motivated in following up on your progress internally. T-letter, I didn't touch on this. I have an example of a T-letter on my LinkedIn profile. You're welcome to just go and download it. What I've basically done here, I'll show you. The left column is the job requirements. Oops. The right column, it's not very big, is it? You'll have to pull it down. But left is the requirements, right is how I fit. And I'm brutally honest. Like you can't read it. But on the SQL one, I said, you know, I haven't touched SQL since 2010. If your job is 80 to 90% SQL, I'm not your person. But hey, let me know, and I'll see who I do know. But this makes it easier for the recruiter and the hiring manager, because instead of trying to look through your resume, you literally say, you asked for this, I have this. You want a bachelor's, I have a master's. You want Jira, I have it 5 years worth. You want, let's see, software development life cycle, mobile native applications, whatever those things are, this is where I fit. This is how many years I have of it. So they can just go left, right, left, right. Okay, yeah, I think I want to talk to this person. Or you automatically are not a candidate. But either way, it's quick for them and you're helping them do their job. Recruiters, I do have a list of 4 people. Unfortunately, they're in Atlanta. I do keep up with them. They've been very helpful to me, but I believe in them. In the beginning, I didn't at all. But you have to make your own decision on that. I'm happy to share those people, but I don't know that they would help you as much if you're not in Atlanta. I already mentioned don't put your resume on the job board. That's my personal choice because then you become reactive. And I prefer to be proactive in my search. Yeah, I already said if you aren't a good match like the sequel, then provide them with other people. Both the person you're referring and the recruiter will appreciate the help. And I'm going to end this on a good example of a failure because I gave you all these examples of how I worked my network, and you got to see the process. So a good example of my failure. I had just finished on the MBA at Turner, and I knew that WebMD, who is also an Atlanta-based company, they like Turner employees because I think they use the same, Jira, Confluence, and these things. So it's easily transferable skills. I identified the job on Indeed. I saw that I knew. I specifically looked at who I knew at WebMD on LinkedIn. I had zero first level contacts. I saw that I had 50 people in common with Anik, and I knew the name. I didn't put her last name here, but it's very distinctive. And I could tell by those 50 people that it was a volleyball community in Atlanta that we all knew in common. And I reached out to her. I said, hey, we know volleyball people in common. And she accepted. And I said, hey, there's this job at WebMD that I'm really interested in. Could we chat? And I got crickets. And I waited about a week and still didn't hear from her. So I then took the email that is in LinkedIn. If you're a first level connection, you can go to click on it and you find their email. And I sent her an email and I said, hey, here's my resume. Here's the job link, the URL of the job I'm really interested in. Oh, and by the way, I actually, outside of volleyball, I actually met your dad 10 years ago. He's a French speaker. I see him all the time over at Vino Venue. And he's a recruiter I talked to 10 years ago, and I know him. So what happened after that point was she called her dad on a Sunday night and said, hey, what do you think of this person? Because I don't really know her. He's like, oh, yeah, put her in. I give her my stamp of approval, 110%. So it caught, and then he called me on Monday morning and said, hey, my daughter called me last night about you. But it's only because they have very distinctive last names and they're Canadian and they're French speakers that I put the 2 and 2 together, because it's not John Smith, right? So what happened? So she put me in. I got a call from the HR. The outcome was I knew the range. The range was, this, and I knew what I was making at Turner was just above it. So I knew better than to answer that number. So I originally just said, well, I know the range. I'm sure we can work with that. And he came back again. He's like, no, really, what were you making? And I was like, okay. So I told him what I was making, the equivalent of what annual salary I would be making, which was outside their range. Crickets, because I gave the dollars first. And I didn't hear back, but boy, I worked that one. So I'm going to say we all make mistakes. Don't give your number first. That was one of my hard lessons, because I knew that this could be a very good match for me. But you have to have some of these bad lessons too. So, and this is me. Here's my email, my LinkedIn. I mentioned earlier, I'm the volunteer coordinator. I would be happy to have you guys come back next year or throughout the year and help at the meetups or, you know, and feel free to connect with me. I'll help you in your job search. But it's your job to define what those things are that are unique about you. If you can't tell me those 3 things, and don't let it be detail-oriented, passionate. I want you to say, oh, Charles Proxy or localization QA, or what is that for you? If you can help me define that, then I can see who I know, right, in order to help you.